Not that close.
Well, thanks everyone for coming here today. And I know there are a billion other events that are going on right now, but I think it's safe to say that this is the most different in terms of vibes and the quality of people, and also physical strength, right?
Yeah.
There's no dominating, right? Dominating. Other events will have the.
Crypto is about MMA. If you can't fight MMA, like, are you even in crypto?
No.
No.
That's fair.
Later, Nick is going to show us how to do a liver punch. Walter volunteered earlier, so
I can demo if you
stick
want.
around 15 minutes.
I can demo.
We're going to tenderize Walter's liver. But no, let's hear about the mainnet launch. Alkimiya mainnet launch.
Yeah, so we're live. So for those who are not familiar with Alkimiya, this is a protocol that allows people to trade transaction fees. So if you think, Casey Rottmore is going crazy and there's another wave of runes coming up and everyone's going to max bid on those, you can long transaction fees, and any kind of difference between where it entered and where it end up being is your profit. And if you're a miner, you're seeing activities dwindling, or you're running a more corporate type of approach to treasury, which is every miner today, except for this guy.
We're just raw dogging it. We're just raw dogging our treasury.
Because mining has changed a lot in the past couple of years, right? But anyways, so for them, this is a way for them to lock in their fee rate before it drops even further down. But we're live, and you can trade it on alkimiya.io. Yes.
Wait, so the Alkimiya journey was a little different too. I want to hear about that because you first started working on this in 2020, 2021. You gave up on Bitcoin mining, which not very cool, but it's okay. And then you moved more into DeFi land and been working on like a project that's adjacent to Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, and is transitioned over the last few years. So tell me about that. Like, what was the first project like? How did it transition over the last 2 to 3 years? And now we're at mainnet. How do you come to the conclusion that we need transaction fee marketplace?
Yeah, so between 2017 and 2020, I was thinking a lot about mining because post-ICO, there was just nothing to do, right? And I unfortunately joined crypto full-time in 2017, and mining was the only thing I was spending time on for a long period of time. And in 2020, I was really unhappy with my job, and I was already thinking about how to, and there were some hash rate tokens that came into existence, and I thought they all sucked. Frankly, they all suck. They don't exist anymore, which, yeah. But anyways, and I wasn't sure if there's anything substantial there, but so I talked to some of my smarter friends, and one of them was Nick, and Nick was like, all right, yeah, you should totally do it. And so I quit my job and started this painful journey.
Leo, you have to understand, it's my job to tell people to start companies. So I'm always going to say that.
I was naive. I thought it was.
I'm sorry for putting you down this path. I didn't mean it. Kidding. Yeah. I'm glad you did it.
Yeah. Anyways, my hairline used to be here. Here. Yeah. No, that's up there. But anyways, so initially we were thinking of making hash power liquid, and that was the approach from 2021. Started the project, and the goal at the time was hoping that we can give this cash flow to rest of the DeFi, right? Because it has pretty natural recurring cash flows that hash was producing. And our first version was trading contracts that are based on revenue per terahash. It was still terahash at the time. And we ran that version from early 2022 to end of 2022. That version did about 35 million-ish in transaction volume. Towards the end, we saw the growth visibly slowing down. And at the time, we thought it's just, okay, the protocol was not very well designed. So we start working on the second version, which was more capital efficient. But around July of 2023, when we launched the second version, we realized that it's just fundamentally impossible to convince miners to do anything that's interesting. And so mining industry also had gone through a lot of changes during that time, right? So it used to be these crazy Sichuan whales that are just gambling on everything, and then after the China ban, more of the mining players changed to something that's more, energy background, and they're much more interested in getting a SPAC listed. They're much more interested in playing debt capital markets and ASIC collateralized loans, and we saw how that went down. But anyways, so it felt like the mining industry was further and further away from crypto itself, right, or even Bitcoin itself, and we realized, okay, it's impossible to sell hash power based product outside of anyone who's not a miner, and just nobody cares, nobody understands it, nobody bothered to learn about it. But during that time, we realized, okay, there are more serious activities that are happening on chain. More people are doing more serious business on chain.
Serious business like degenning BRC20s.
So that was 2020. That was summer of 2023. At the time, fuck it. So it was rollups, right? Rollup on Ethereum.
Yeah.
So right, these guys are the sequencer are posting like massive amount of call data on L1, and that predictable pattern has started to emerge. And so we talked to Polygon and all these people, and they're like, oh yeah, this is definitely a problem, the variability of L1 gas fee. So we started thinking, we realized, okay, the fee rate slash gas was much more interesting and is more relevant to people than hash power. And just slicing out that one piece and focusing on that, it significantly expands the use case. And also it is a meaningful thing to trade on, right? So today there are these services, exchanges that are fully exposed to the volatility of fee rates. 3 weeks ago, or I lost track of time, but OKX was doing this UTXO consolidation. It's a very, very common thing that exchanges do. They do all the time, right? But they fucked up their script. Their bots were bidding against each other. They paid something like 18 million in transaction fee.
Yep.
I'm sure some people
took a whole day.
Yeah, I'm sure some people got fired, but as a result, right? But the thing is, these kind of things, they happen on chain all the time, though.
OKX paid 18 million in transaction fees.
Yeah.
It was over 15 million, that's for sure. And it took a whole day to run this. It was one of those things like they shipped to prod on a Friday, and by Sunday they said, I think the official OKX account was like, that's us, this was intentional, whoops. That was kind of the TLDR of that. And I want to gut check if I think that's pretty much what happened. Parker's nodding his head, so this is probably true. And yeah, but this is common. If you look at the only fee spike in 22, it was Binance consolidating UTXOs in November. It's the only interesting thing happening on chain at the time. And then Casey comes out with ordinals. Casey finally making things interesting. Do we want to break this into just a...
But fees are at a 10-year low on Bitcoin right now, right? Or they're pretty low.
Like today in the past 24 hours?
Yeah.
How do you have time to check the fee rate while you're fighting, Nick? But they are.
Someone tweeted that. I don't know.
Yeah, they're very low today, which begs the question. And if you look at, I'm not really the past 72 hours, but if you look at the types of transactions, they are still considerably taken up by Rune's mint transactions. So this is more just damning of Bitcoin use case in general. Lisa's nodding her head.
Oh no.
I brought you on because we need somebody who really knows Bitcoin.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, I was talking to a friend today who was basically being like, no one's transacting on Bitcoin, Lisa. No one's transacting. I was like, oh shit, you might be right. I mean, I don't pay attention to the weather, if that makes sense, maybe as much as I could. But yeah, I mean, maybe all the transactors are at the talks at the Bitcoin conference. I don't think that's true, but I don't know. Maybe it's down now because everyone's busy.
If it's a total of the 20 some odd thousand people who are here, who are the entirety of the Bitcoin network, then we have a lot bigger top of funnel problem. So,
the L2s are gonna save the fees.
Lord knows there's plenty of them.
I have the opposite view actually, though. I think L2s overall suppress fees on mainnet.
Yeah. They're gonna lower fees or die trying.
Even further. Yeah.
Walk us through that a little bit, Nick.
Well, I mean, I think you could do a study on this. I mean,
you're kind of the guy for that. Why don't you do the study on it? It's like
No.
It's like your calling card
I'm
before
busy.
This whole punchy thing.
I'm retired. I'm a professional cage fighter now. No, but actually, I think it's an open question. I mean, what is the interplay between L2? I think I asked you this when you did my show, Leo. What's the interplay between L2 and L1 fees? And I was always of the view that L2s increase the supply of block space and thus suppress the fee burden on L1. But it could be the case that it's like you're creating new ways to transact and you're inducing new demand, like the Jevons paradox kind of thing. I don't know if you have a view on that.
Yeah, I think there are several factors at play here. So first of all, I think the macro outcome is probably not going to change much because there's not much happening on Bitcoin anyways. So it's not quite like in Ethereum's case, a lot of activities were happening on L1, right? And they're just moving all these things onto different L2s. And as a result, Ethereum L1 gas fee is also incredibly low right now. But with the 4844 and all these things. But on Bitcoin, like, what are the activities that people are moving to L2 from L1 to L2 though? Not really, right? So like
it's net new activity creation if the L2s work on Bitcoin. They're
chasing fleeting yield. At what expense, basically, I think.
Oh, so we're okay it's okay to talk about that?
It's okay to say yield here. This is a Blockspace podcast. We are yield acknowledging. We acknowledge the reality that most users appear to have no risk tolerance. They have infinite risk tolerance and are okay moving billions off chain with extreme trusted counterparties.
Yeah, I think the funniest quote, and unfortunately it's so spot on about the state of I guess usage of Bitcoin today is from an audience here today. It's embarrassing that Satoshi didn't think about yield. I keep thinking about that.
Shout out Court.
Shout out Court.
I just met Gwart for the first time. What's up?
He's been doxxed in front of his girlfriend. Camera's off you, don't worry. No, I think that's a pretty interesting conversation we'll have to have more of as people are launching L2s and figuring out how those L2s work with the L1 itself. Shout out Citria and all the other things people are angeling into on stage. Cool. Did you have a follow-up there?
I don't have a follow-up. How deep into Blockspace discussion do we want to get, Leo?
I don't think we have an agenda, right? Well,
yeah.
So initially, 10 minutes before we started this conversation, we wanted to do a post-fight interview.
Do you want to talk about the fight?
Yeah, we'd love to talk about it.
This is your first public appearance since the fight, right?
Yeah, this is basically my post-fight press conference.
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone is aware about the fight.
Everybody.
All right, I knocked someone out in 1 minute yesterday. It was great.
Yeah, did he get C-stars knocked out? Because I rewatched the end of it, and he just looked KO'd from the sense where he was in such physical pain he couldn't move anymore. But I didn't see his eyes close or roll.
No, he wasn't unconscious. The ref stopped it. It was a TKO technically, so the ref stopped it. But I would have fully separated him from his consciousness if given the chance. I mean, you have to keep going until the ref steps in.
We actually have one question first. What is the rules of karate combat versus, say, UFC? Because I was watching last night and I had no idea what was going on. It just you couldn't take someone down, but you could take someone down. You kick someone in the head, but you can't kick someone in the head.
There are some takedowns. Yeah, it's basically UFC minus the grappling.
Okay.
But there are takedowns. But there's no submissions, so you can't choke someone out.
Well, he tried to grapple you though.
Yeah, he did grapple with me. It's because
or he was just trying to touch your butt.
I clipped him with a good right hand early, about 12 seconds in, and then he started shooting takedowns because he didn't like that I was clipping him. And so yeah, you can shoot a takedown, you just can't shoot a double leg. If you're familiar with that.
I'm not.
So yeah, basically the point of karate combat is people are bored in the UFC by the grappling. They don't like seeing the Dagestani guys just lay and pray, and so KC Karate Combat changed the rule set and they eliminated all the submissions. So they wanted it to be more dynamic, more striking oriented, and have more KOs, which there is a very high KO rate in karate combat.
What do you think about the swivel kick that people kept doing, where they'd flip it behind and kind of put a kick up towards someo's head?
Yeah.
Is that really that effective, or can you dodge it?
It's very powerful if you can land it.
Okay.
It's a huge amount of nerve. I don't know that kick.
Yeah, I didn't
so
see it from you.
I didn't learn it. I only had 5 months of
Hey,
training.
you still won, so no need to be defensive. But I was just.
I can
interested.
throw a roundhouse kick and a front kick.
Yeah, like pretty freaky. Okay, so.
I have a quick
yeah,
question.
jump
Just
in.
like, who is this guy you're fighting? Where'd you find him? Like,
He
what's the
works for one of my
backstory?
portfolio companies.
He works for
Oh,
a portfolio.
Bad investor update.
You're
I
next,
kicked your ass.
Leo. You're next. Actually, you're a fighter, right?
How long had he been training for?
He trained for about 2 months, and I've trained for about 4 months.
Okay.
So we're both novices. People were saying, "Oh, Nick just like found a guy that he could beat up," and it's like, no, we're both new. And this guy was ex-military, okay? Like he was in Afghanistan, fighting ISIS or something. So like, come on, bro. Like he looked fearsome, okay?
He worked logistics.
A lot of people were chirping me. They're like, Nick just found a guy that he could beat up. It's like, dude, have you seen me? I'm not fearsome, okay? I'm not a fearsome person. This dude had tattoos. He had like a beard. Like he was a scary
Appearance isn't
looking
everything,
guy.
though. You know, like.
We were the exact same size. I did have a slight advantage in the training. But people are trying to diminish the 1 minute KO. Unbelievable.
No, I'm not diminishing.
I'm
it at all.
impressed. I'm very impressed. Yeah. I'm also impressed. Like what second you landed your first like punch. Like that's pretty.
I've watched the tape a few
Oh, I
times.
see. So you're watching tapes and the fee market. It sounds like.
Yeah, two screens. Yeah.
So what's like your dominant hand, and which one are you more comfortable landing a punch with?
I mean, I'm an orthodox, so you would throw the jab with the left hand, and then your power hand is your right hand.
And which do you prefer to strike with?
It just depends on where the jab is like you just kind of keep someone at range, and then the right cross is like you try and knock someone out with that one.
Okay.
What was your knockout land? The one that what did you land that knocked him out?
So
Sorry.
he was like rocked the whole time. So I'm not kidding. First of all, I clipped him with a right hook, and then in the clinch, he clinched me. I kneed him in the belly as hard as I possibly could. And that is a terrible thing. It like really sucks to get kneed right in the solar plexus. That gassed him out, and then at that point I knew that he wasn't going to last the round. And then I kicked him in the liver, which is also a terrible thing to happen to you. And then that's when he went down, and then I just finished him with ground and pound,
A
basically.
few clubs to the head. So this is actually where we need Walt to come up on stage to demonstrate this. No, we won't do that to you.
I have intro music.
Yeah, we do. We need the intro music. No, I was impressed how fast it went because the other ones were kind of slow.
Well, the truth is I was going so fast that I would have gassed out, and I would have really struggled in the later rounds, so I'm very, very glad it was just one round.
What did you guys say when you kind of said goodbye at the end?
I said that he should be proud of himself, and that he was like he should be proud of taking the fight, and he had nothing to be ashamed of, and that we could go back to being friends again.
And you said you'd see him at your stand-up on 9 a.m. Monday morning.
And you're in for the Series B.
Yeah, I said you should be proud of yourself. He said, really? I'm like, yeah. And so it was all love, but he's a nice guy. Honestly, he's a nice guy.
Okay, when's the next fight?
They asked me to come back for the next KC in September in Singapore.
Oh, okay.
I'll be there.
I don't know if I want to do it again. It's
Really?
terrible thing to go through.
But how the adrenaline's probably pretty great, right?
I was able to
Knocking a
control
man
it,
out.
but yeah, I don't know. Obviously, it's a high. Like I've never felt like that in my life before. But the whole process of training and cutting weight is awful, and I don't recommend it. And also being in the arena with a man that's trying to kill you is terrifying.
I'm sure he felt the same way, right? Like.
Yeah, it's just not good. I don't recommend it for anyone. No one should do combat sports.
So you're gonna watch the new Gladiator movie when it comes out?
Is there a new one?
Yeah, there's a new one coming
Oh,
out.
hell yeah.
Cool. Well, that concludes the press conference. And I think that might wrap up the mini interview. Leo, got anything to add as we close out there?
Already? We didn't talk about anything substantial, I thought.
We talked a lot about liver punches.
Oh.
Leo, you're a fighter as well, right?
Well, I didn't want to bring this up.
Oh, are you gonna critique my form?
You're a fighter. You're a Portco. What similar size? What else do we need?
Well,
How much you weigh?
Well, let's just put it
Could
this
you
way.
cut down to his weight?
Well, if
If you fight at 155,
if I have to lose to you on purpose, like the other guy, I will have to try
that
really
wasn't on
hard.
purpose.
I have to
That
try
wasn't-
really, really hard. I have to forget about 5 years of training.
I have 5 months of training.
Leo, I didn't know you fought.
Occasionally.
Why don't you fight your head?
What's your
No,
discipline?
that wouldn't be fair. Yeah.
Wow.
We talked about this.
I forgot. Are you a boxer?
Yes.
Mm.
What's the difference between boxing and karate chopping? Sorry, I'm karate.
I mean, karate is like, all of your limbs, basically.
I see.
Yeah.
Should we reconsider the Segway discount? I don't know.
I feel like the last time I said yes to this, I got in trouble, but yes.
Interesting. This is why I invited you.
I don't know, just because I feel like, I think it would solve a lot of things people complain about. Like, they're bitching about all this, like, ordinal stuff or, like, inscription stuff in the blockchain, and it's like, well, just make them pay full price for it. Like, see if they really want it still. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It also makes, like, the cross input signature aggregation stuff way more valuable, because now, like, you're paying, like, you no longer have the discount, so, like, actually saving bytes on signatures is, like, a huge win for everyone. I don't know. Miners can get excited because, like, fees go up, like, earnings go up, I guess. Like, I don't know.
What was the original justification behind the Segway discount? Do we even remember? Was it a lightning thing?
I think it was a Luke thing.
No, I thought it was like a sneaky way to get the block size increase, right? Like, they the discount 4x the block size without them saying they were 4xing the block size. I feel like it's how they sneakily snuck in, like, blocks are still a megabyte that in value that you pay for, but they can be up to 4 megabytes in size through the signature data.
They just changed the pricing of the weight units.
Yeah, but I feel like, I don't know, it's kind of like a technical, I feel like it's this deeply technical sort of, like, almost like arcane knowledge of what's going on with block sizes. Though maybe the inscription stuff with the 4 megas really sort of, like, pulled the curtain back on that more than it had been before. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But, like, yeah, like, SegWit kind of pretends like blocks are still 1 megabyte because you pay full price for a megabyte of block space, but you can get up to 4 in a block.
Yeah, it's bizarre that they sought to obfuscate it at all, because it's very easy to tell the blocks were not confined to a megabyte anymore.
I mean, you say that, but, like, he's kind of like, I mean, I didn't go through the SegWit, like, hate wars or whatever that was, but it feels like there was just all this thing about we're not getting, like, a lot of rhetoric, at least, like, again, like, as a person looking back on it rather than having lived through it, that, like, everyone was talking about increasing the block size, and SegWit was, like, not the block size increase, right?
Yeah,
like,
I think that was my interpretation, was they didn't want to give in to the big blockers, and this is a way to pretend that we were holding the line, even though it was an effective block size increase. Everybody knows that.
So how does this affect fees? Because I remember when ordinals were popping off, and there was a lot of frenzied discussion on, like, this is gonna make it more expensive for normal financial transactions. Isn't that the whole purpose of Bitcoin? Like, this is gonna challenge the Bitcoin as a monetary network. And Eric Wall had a pretty good, I think, thread which codified some of this. And I don't remember exactly how it went, but he came to the conclusion that because the inscriptions were largely this arbitrary data going in SegWit, it arguably made, theoretically, in a dynamic block space fee market, normal Bitcoin financial transactions arguably cheaper. Maybe I'm mischaracterizing this, but it was an interesting take, and I don't think we really kind of fleshed it out as much. Did you?
Wait,
want to
I don't remember the logic there. Can you
Yeah.
explain that one?
No, I can't. I should have invited Eric, but he is at the Wizards party setting up right now.
I heard you're DJing.
Yeah. I'm trying to get out of this media business and just into DJing right now.
Everybody's pivoting.
everybody has to, the music is still playing. We have to sit down before the bull market really heats up. So at 100K, you're locked into that job until some vesting schedule hits, and then everybody switches places again when the market's back down. I'm just kidding. I'm here till the end with you, Will.
That's good. That's good. That's why I'm here.
Okay. Actual conversation topic, because I got a tweet. I said, I've got Nic Carter and the gang for the first time talking block space and fees. I want to hear what's up?
Just back to your original comment on Eric Wall's comment. So if I have to speculate how this unfolds, right? So why would the introduction of inscriptions, these transactions with larger block size, would potentially reduce the transaction fee for normal wallet transfers? I think there are two possible ways that this would unfold. So one, if most of these transactions, and we've seen this has already started, right, with blanking on the name, the marathon thing. Slipstream. And it's very likely that more and more of these kind of transactions will move out of band just because the Bitcoin Core relay policy, and that's not going to change. Let's be real, right? So
could change.
Let's say
Lisa's shaking her head.
It's got to change. If it doesn't change, it's like dead in the water. I feel like, I don't know. Like, I think it'll change. I'm bullish.
Let's say the next 2 weeks.
Not next 2 weeks. No.
All right. So if most of these high value transactions, they move to out of band payments, right? And just because the mempool 10 minutes block time makes it very difficult for people to get anything minted with RBF, with more and more sniping tools being developed. It's reasonable to assume that most of these inscriptions will move off chain, and this is assuming that some kind of like flash bots type of services won't happen on Bitcoin. But if that was the version of reality that we're going to move towards, right? Then the mempool itself, the public mempool, will just be normal transfers, not contaminated by these high value transactions. And the other possibility of how this will unfold is, actually, that's probably the most reasonable way to, if that's the conclusion, this is probably the most reasonable path towards there.
I could see that. I accidentally asked that question without actually fully thinking through what I thought about it, or if I had even understood it. I'll go back to
and just to point out one more thing. So the way that transaction fees gets estimated in the wallets, right? They all use some variations of this RPC endpoint called estimate smart fees.
Yeah.
Estimate smart fees, and it just look at the and there are several preferences: 6 blocks, 3 blocks, 2 blocks, 1 block, and it just looks at the past results, and they have some primitive method to filter out the outliers, but it's more or less the same. So if there are these high value transactions that moves the entire mempool, I guess, weighted average fees up, as an outcome, all these get estimate smart fees. They will update the and have a higher value. So it has a cascading effect to what the others will experience when they make wallet transfers.
You're nodding your head, Lisa, again.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
I think what's interesting to observe is what is the percentage of wallet it's not even just type of transaction anymore, right? It's not just wallet transfers versus inscriptions. It's really just the weight in the mempool, the weight in a block. I think that weight distribution is going to be very interesting. See how that evolve, because that has the most significant impact on the, I guess, average fee rate per block, something like that.
So we can use this knowledge to degen fees on Alkimiya.
So speaking about like Blockspace and stuff, one of the kind of interesting sort of things that I realized after Rune's launched, and I haven't really been watching like Rune volume and stuff, but I think people ran into some sharp edges with like bidding on runes. Like my understanding was like they would submit transactions to try and get runes after it like had been run out, but their transactions would still get included, so they'd end up paying high fees but not be able to actually secure the asset. But it made me realize like something like rune mints, like mints on the blockchain, basically create like banded stripes of value on like in Blockspace. So like, I mean, it's not exactly like, it's not MEV exactly. It's just that like Blockspace immediately after certain transactions is worth more. Like it's basically is an independent market from any other Blockspace. All of a sudden there's like this weird positionality like that you're bidding for that didn't really exist. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Like I guess BRC20s kind of had it, but anyways, like, is this something that like you guys are gonna have, Leo, to like take into account in your Blockspace like marketplace, or is it like, are you guys building tools where you can kind of auction off like selective block space in that manner? Or is it like, cause like, I mean, if you think about it, if you're like trying to like claim a rune mint or something, right? You would almost like, you want to be sending your you want an assurance that if you send your transaction and it gets ordered in such a way, like a service that like makes sure you don't get mined into a block where you're not going to get anything, you know what I mean? Like you only get in if you're like a valid bid for that space, and if not, like they can almost guarantee you won't. Like that as a service seems like something worth spending money on versus like just kind of sending it out to like the broad mempool and hoping that you end up in the right place at the right time, if that makes sense. Like, but it kind of illustrated, at least for me, like this really cool new like almost like banding, like almost like, yeah, this like new market segregation of block space that was like, oh, you could like really build a cool service if you made advantage of that.
It's like a slipstream for sniping the particular next in line runes mint transaction you want.
Yeah.
You call it snipe stream.
With like, yeah, but with like an assurance that if you send it to this particular like relay or service, there's like this guarantee that like if you don't fit, if you're not a competitive bid, you don't get exercise or whatever.
Yeah. So I was actually having a conversation with your brother. On where did you go?
You went out to get a drink.
Oh,
Liver
yes.
punch threat.
Yeah.
You abandoned.
Punching liver in a different way. But this is an active development in Ethereum land with pre-confirmation. So the idea is that, okay, if you know that, okay, the next slot is yours, you can auction off this particular block to builders, and regardless of the content that you're expecting. And so you have guarantee inclusion, and you have the sequence of the transactions will be, whatever the bidder suggests. But it makes more sense in Ethereum because the MEV is much more expressive. I mean, it's going down these days, but that's a different topic. In introducing something like pre-confirmation in Bitcoin, where just to clarify, so it would be something like, okay, if I offer a service, so if a bunch of mining pools, they get together and they have 90% of the aggregate hash rate, and they all use the same relay service where someone bid for a specific sequence of transactions. This could be because they want to get into like Babylon or something like that, right? So that would be the incentive for them to do that. And they pay a predetermined fee, which has a premium over the average fee rate like today because they get the guarantee of the transaction. And if any of those any of those mining pools that's offering the service actually mine that specific block height, they will guarantee that transaction gets included in a specific sequence. The problem with that is it's incredibly difficult to price that service. So Tim Rothgarden, who highly respected
Good old
person.
Tim.
Good old Tim.
Yeah. Tim's basically like the leading expert on auction mechanics and computational algorithmic stuff. So he was like the lead author of like EIP 1557, which introduced like the whatever. This is like a series of textbooks where he's got like really interesting look at like the auction ban for like FCC like bands of radio waves. Anyways, yeah. So I guess he's working on this or talking about it.
Well, so he had a research paper from a while ago with a bunch of other people. I don't remember their names, but the study essentially talks about active pricing of it's a formalization of like active pricing these the value of the blocks, especially with prior order flows being involved, is much more difficult than because all the fee mechanism today is passive, right? So the validators they just take whatever that's being paid. Miners take whatever first price auction, they take whatever is paid. I mean, with the exception of Slipstream, that there is pricing power, but it's out of band, but it's not like publicly, right? But that paper, which is very interesting, you might find it interesting actually. Tim Rothgard wrote it, but yeah, it formalizes why having validators actively price, I guess physically a set of block space in this case, is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it seems hard.
Yeah, it is very hard. Yeah.
I think this is one of the things though that like this is one of my frustrations about like I have a lot of frustrations with the current RBF rules, and one of the big problems with it is like it's like so for those of you who aren't familiar with like RBF, it's basically the mechanism that lets you rebid a transaction. So if you like think of, I mean, I think obviously think of like every block as like a block space auction, right? So whenever you're making a transaction, you're like bidding for space in a block, and usually there's some like urgency or like willingness that you're willing to pay to like for speed, et cetera. So there's kind of some interesting trade-offs you can do, and it again depends on everyone else is bidding for space at the same time. When you put out a transaction without RBF, basically you can't change your bid. You're sort of stuck on to like whether it falls out of the mempool or yeah. But there's this protocol that got introduced, I don't know, a long time ago. Peter Todd was like, I think the main person for it. It's called RBF, BIP 125 or like RBF, replaced by fee. But essentially what it means is you as like a Bitcoin transactor that you can like take a transaction, put it out with a certain fee rate, and then you can rebid it. So you can like increase. So like maybe that transaction that you put out, you weren't really aware of what like the current market conditions were for that current block space auction. So like RBF is like is really like the cheapest way that there is to change your bed. You can only go up, and the rules about according to the current relay, like current mempool relay system, the floor of your next bid is kind of dictated by this protocol. So that basically means like if you bid like I don't know, let's say like I'm gonna say like $5, like the RBF basically says where your next bid has to be, right? So like you know, auctioneers will be like, okay, like $5, he says $10, whatever. RBF is like the rules in it are basically like, okay, $5 now, and then kind of depending on what transaction you're trying to replace, it might be like, okay, well the next bid you can possibly put in is like $50, for example. And it's like, well, I was willing to pay like 15, but RBF as a protocol sets the floor too high on some transactions. Not every transaction, again, it's really dependent. But it has this like I would say like the ratchet effect of like what the auctioneer is basically saying you can bid next isn't super granular, and like I think there's some really interesting proposals like Peter Todd's replaced by fee rate RBFR. I think would make it such that when you're transacting in Bitcoin, like so a nice thing about kind of fixing this and moving to sort of a different way of doing it is it. Ideally, you would be able to make more incremental bids on your transaction fees so that you could put it out at one time. And so you would get a more dynamic auction mechanic going in theory, because people would be able, like rebidding your transactions more frequently would be something that could be more easily built into wallets. So right now you don't really want to do it to two people too much, especially for the user experience, because again, like I said, the floor jumps can be really like surprisingly out of reach for people in a weird way. I don't know. Anyways, maybe that's like way too much info.
This is really fascinating because I'm thinking about the people who are most frequently RBFing transactions right now. Ordinals snipers. You look at the incredible activity that these folks have. They RBF dozens of times, bidding against each other.
Yeah.
This would dramatically change the mechanics of that. Fascinating.
Yeah, I think when the original RBF rule was designed, it did not take into consideration of the possibility of high value transactions getting and fee sniping. And it's funny because Peter Todd was the first one who came up with that BIP that got rid of fee sniping. Right? I don't remember exactly what it was. It was from ages ago. Okay. But anyways, and well, so RBF definitely didn't take consideration into didn't take high value transaction into consideration, and also didn't take proper auction theory into consideration as well. Yeah.
I mean, when they built it, like if you talk to Peter Todd, he'll be like, a lot of the reasons that the rules, there's like 5 rules in there that you kind of have to follow when you're making a rebid transaction. And he's like, yeah, like those rules are in there because we were worried about taking the network down with too much extra transaction volume. So like rather than making it such that you can continually spam the network with the new rebids, we wanted to make it expensive for you to like rebid a transaction. And so we knew that like with these rules, like we probably wouldn't be like stepping on anyone's toes around like miners not getting enough fees, as well as like reducing the amount of time someone would be willing to rebid it, like to resend that transaction data is really what they were kind of like optimizing for. So I think one of the interesting things with like mempool design specifically is that they, at least is like the relay mechanism, is they really like concentrate pretty hard on like there's this like delicate balance between we want miners to get as much money as possible. Like we want miner incentive to not use this relay as like a big part of the consideration. But the other consideration is we really want to make sure that like this is a relay, like that we're not giving people the tools to be able to spam the network with way too much traffic that just like takes everyone's nodes down. So I think those two things get really difficult to balance just at like such a big scale. I don't know.
I tried to ask this question earlier. I got a response to a tweet. What question should I ask? And it's less technical and less granular, but what is a bull and a bear case, or a bull or a bear case, for transaction fees over the next 2 years? Throw it to you, Leo, or
Leo,
Nick.
this is well, you should start here.
Yeah.
What's bear?
Bear would
What
be
does that even mean?
flat, because we can't go down anymore. I mean, like,
Yeah.
do we expect to see transaction fees increase? The moving average of the, let's say, 100-day moving average of transaction fees increase significantly over the next 2 to 4 years, over this epoch.
I'll quickly start. I think that it is a consistent myth in the Bitcoin space that fees are going to reach this sustained high plateau. We've never seen that before. It's always relatively transient spikes. And, it's like high commodity prices. Like if oil spikes, miners find more ways to, make oil. And the same with gold. And in crypto, when fees spike, people use alternatives or build L2s. And so high prices are the cure for high prices. Things always come down. So I do think there's a delusion in the Bitcoin space that we can reach a permanently high plateau of fees for that reason.
Is that similar to the chart that I've seen? I'm only thinking of like maybe Pierre Rochard, who says high fees, downward pressure on basically high fees eventually. They're a transient thing, and that it.
I wrote an article in, I think, 2018. Was it 2018? Do you remember the one I'm talking about? 2020, like fee cyclicality, something like that. Basically arguing that high fees inevitably cause the emergence of alternatives, and high fees cause suppression, and then so they just don't last. Paul Stortz has also written about this. He's good on it.
Do you agree with that, Leo?
So I have a very long answer to that. So I think if we introduce more use case to Bitcoin, and it doesn't matter if it's on L2 or somewhere else, but on UTXO based, I think all these activity what it introduces is higher volatility rather than like sustaining at a higher level of fee. Because if Bitcoin fee rate were to stay at like 200 set like forever, this is just not usable. It's not usable. And so people are going to find alternative. We've seen this pattern over and over again, right? And for ETH, I think we've seen that more frequently because ETH is an experiment of Bitcoin, right? Anyways, so when that happens, and of course that reduces, there's greater incentive to invest in infrastructure or scaling efforts. And Bitcoin is also no stranger to these efforts. There's plenty of scaling wars in the history of Bitcoin that led to very nasty results. But when fees sustain at a high level, there is greater incentive, and of course miners are happy, but there's greater incentive to invest in infrastructure, the scaling efforts. So there are two things, right? There is the amount of compute storage full node resources that one on-chain action consumes, and these can only be reduced by technical efforts, by moving transactions off-chain or something like that. But there the other axis, which is the how much you pay. This axis will always be a market-oriented problem, because there is always competition for finite amount of resources. Demand is ephemeral, but supply, it can't scale that fast, and it's not elastic. So I think if the bullish case for activities taking place on Bitcoin is not really that, okay, fees are going to stay at 300 sat forever. It's that the volatility is going to be incredibly high.
I think we should release our long-suffering audience here and all get a cocktail, but I forgot what I was going to say.
I think that's probably pretty good. Any last words? I mean, I'm just so glad you're on mainnet, Leo. This is like a huge deal.
Yeah.
Oh,
We have many of us in this room and waiting. And I'm so glad Nick survived the fight. We were all worried.
I was a little worried. Not gonna lie.
Me too, man. Me too. He was a scary looking